Okay, so today I'm talking about Andy Goldsworthy, and I know some of you probably know him. He has quite a few pieces in the Bay Area, installations around the Bay Area, and we'll talk about those. But I'm going to talk about him, and I have quite a few videos because he's got a lot of, he does a lot of documentation of his work since it's not, he has some permanent pieces, but he has a lot of pieces that don't stick around for very long. So go to my slides. Okay, so Andy Goldsworthy was born in 1956, and he's a British artist, and he collaborates with nature. He has pieces in England and Scotland, the North Pole, Japan, the Australian outback, and in the U.S. Also, he has some piece. He has installation I just recently found out about that's in Rio de Janeiro, and often, as I mentioned, his pieces are transient or ephemeral, which means they don't last very long. They're temporary. But he also has some sites that are not temporary. He photographs each piece once right after he makes it, and his goal is to understand nature by directly participating in nature as intimately as he can. And he generally works with whatever comes to hand. He works sometimes with twigs or leaves or stones, even snow and ice and reed and thorns. He works a lot with water also. So I have a few pages of quotes by him. He says, I enjoy the freedom of just using my hands and found tools, a sharp stone, the quill of a feather, and thorns. I take the opportunity each day offers. If it's snowing, I work with snow. At leaf fall, it will be with leaves. A blown over tree becomes a source of twigs and thorn or branches. Can I have people mute, please? Because I'm kind of hearing some background music or noise, like typing. um, I stop at a place and pick up materials because I feel that there is something to be discovered, and here's where I can learn. And he talks about the energy and space around a material that is just as important as energy and space within the material. So we talked about the weather. When I touch a rock, I am touching and working the space around it. It's not independent of its surroundings, and the way it sits tells how it came to be there. Let's see. And he talks about how when he leaves an area, that processes continue. Let's see. Okay, so let's go. I have a bunch of videos. Okay, so we'll do this first video that talks about who is Andy Goldsworthy. Okay.
Andy Goldsworthy, a British sculptor renowned in his field that creates temporary landscape art installations out of sticks, stones, and anything and everything else that he finds outside. Much of Goldsworthy's land art is transient and ephemeral, leading many to view it as a comment on the Earth's fragility. But for Goldsworthy, the picture is more complicated.
There's two different ways of looking at the world. You can walk on the path or you can walk through the hedge. And I think that's the beauty of art, that it just makes you step aside off the normal way of walking or looking. Now here I am working with the stone, grinding them down, and I spend all this time, several hours, making a little pile of pigment that I will make into a ball and throw into the river, and there'll be a splash. And that's just an instant in that cycle of stone as it goes through its process of solidification. And I think it's a little memory in the life of a stone, but very much in the spirit of in the nature of stone.
I don't think he's using nails or any adhesive. I think he's using other little thorns or twigs to create the
When I
piece.
make a work, I often take it to the very edge of its collapse. And that's a very beautiful balance.
Must be frustrating.
Just the idea of trying to understand colour, the colour of things, what is there, what colours are there, is very important to me. To find the most intense red or the black or the yellow or the green and concentrate it into these patches. These are just examinations of what colours are there. Because I see the world in colour. I mean, black and white photographs look great, but the point about my art is that I learn through what I'm making. I go to nature not to impose things upon it, but to feed from it, to try and understand what is going on. And colour is a very important part of that, to try and understand the nature of colour, what colour means. Water is very important to colour. It is a way of activating colour and releasing colour, bringing it to life. And a leaf is many different colours depending upon where it is placed and in which light and in which circumstances it's used. And finding the right place to extract colour, to draw out that colour, to generate that energy is as important as finding the material. The human presence is always there in what I make. I'm not trying to mimic nature. The things that I make are by me. I hope they are sensitive to the materials and the place. And my body is a part of that. And I will often use my hands and my
Oh, so I was just gonna say this piece is made out of ice that is locally in the area where he was working. And he had to do it very quickly because depending on when the sun was coming up, of course it would melt, but also the light coming through the glasses or through the ice is really beautiful.
body to make the work. Trying to get beyond the object is very important to me, that it's not, they're not just objects that I'm making, but it's an atmosphere, it's a space, it's a place that I'm trying to understand. For most of the time, I use whatever is around. Normally I don't know even what I'm going to make that day. I go out, the day starts. It starts by picking up leaves. It's a response to the weather, the light, and I will use thorns or spit rather than glue. Not because I'm trying to play the primitive, but that's the best way to make the works. And I love that idea of finding not just the material, but the means to work the material from the place. There's a huge sense of freedom about that. You know, as Brancusi said about photography, why talk about sculpture when I can photograph it? And it is a language to talk about your sculpture. There will always be, it's not intended to replace the sculpture, and the sculpture is not being made for the photograph, but the photograph is a very important result of the work, and it's the way I look at it through photography. It's the way I look at what I've made in the past and can see the links between various things. It is a language. It's my own language as well as a language that I can use to talk with you about it too. I think a good work is a moment of understanding and clarity in a very chaotic situation, like a shaft of light that just penetrates it. And for a moment, it's very clear.
Okay, so you got a brief, quick bit of introduction to Andy Goldsworthy. And one of the things I noticed that a lot of his work has this black hole or opening in the middle of his pieces, and just wondering what people think that is, or why would he do that? Why would he have this black hole or circle in the middle of a lot of his works? Just if that brings anything up for you. Oh, Karen?
I think of it rather than a hole, kind of a centering device.
Uh-huh.
I see something quite spiritual in his work, and so to me, it's not a hole; it's a center.
Yeah, it does draw your eye to the center of his work. And to me, it's sort of like it's like opening. It's an opening space, a space where there's sort of nothingness or openness is what one of the things I think about when I see it. Does anybody else have any thoughts about it?
Yeah. Judy, I also thought that empty in the center is just telling us the contrast, like periphery is expanding. So something's originating from the center and then this expansiveness of whatever the contrast he's putting on together. So it's as he was doing, I was only thinking, art, if you look at it, it's our thought and we are creating something with it. And that creating indirectly, the feeling gives you the energy to create as you project your thoughts into the whatever that object you're projecting in. So I was just, as I was looking at his art, that's what I thought. All the nature is created such a, its landscape. And here we are using this material to create our, it's not a preconceived imagination. He said, as he keeps looking and whatever the day brings on, he builds upon it. So I'm thinking, is all your thoughts, feelings are being projected with all the objects that you find. So, that's what I think.
That's nice. Both of you gave some interesting thoughts on that. Okay, anybody else? Okay, well then I will go back to showing some other of the videos. Trying to decide which one I want to show. Maybe I'll show this. So this piece is at Stanford called River. What's it called now? I've forgotten the name of it. River. Okay, well, we'll see once I show it to you. But it's I don't know if you've seen it. It's near the Cantor. And in my last class, a lot of people had gone down had seen it, and actually had heard Andy speak when he visited the space. So the location. So I thought, wow, they're lucky. I've never heard him speak in person. Oh, Stone River.
The British sculptor Andy Goldsworthy harnesses nature and the environment to shape his art. Stone, dirt, leaves, branches, and other materials are subjected to elements such as water, wind, heat, light, and time to make sculptures that are bound to the processes of creation and decay. The relationship between the sculpture's medium and site is important to the artist. Stone River is constructed from sandstone that was salvaged from Stanford University buildings destroyed in the 1906 and 1989 earthquakes. In situating the work like an archaeological excavation, Goldsworthy makes reference to the stone's earthly origin. Goldsworthy says, "I strive to make connections between what we call nature and what we call man-made. I hope that this sculpture will reside somewhere between a building and a quarry. It will bring together the stone's geological and social nature. I like the relationship to the past life of a material, of one hand placed upon another."
No, he's making me a little dizzy, but it's nice so you can walk along it, and then you could also walk above it, and be able to see it from different viewpoints. Okay. Has anyone seen this installation? I don't know. It's funny because I've been to the Cantor recently, but I haven't seen it. How about Lena? Can you tell us about it? Oh, you're on mute though. You have to unmute.
I've seen it a few times. I even seen a ballet performance in that area that was just spectacular. And I was wondering, did he build that by himself or did he have a crew helping him?
Oh, I'm pretty sure I think he did have a crew. Yeah, definitely. He's another one of those. I think who was it? I know Maria's here, but she was talking about how a lot of artists have assistants or people helping them with their work. So, so did the ballet? How did the ballet dancers interact with it?
You just use the whole area to do their ballet, their dance, and we just sat around it. If I remember correctly, it's probably 15 years ago. We just sat all around it to watch. I can't remember exactly when it was built.
I think it said. I think it was early 2000s.
Early 2000s.
Yeah. Oh, I have to take a look at it because I was right there and I didn't turn around to go see it.
You really have to go down.
Yeah.
Because it's really much lower than the parking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so I was going to show another installation that's actually also in the Bay Area. Oopsie. Here we go. We're going to have to go through a little bit of an ad here. Yeah. Okay, this is at the De Young. Oh. Uh-oh. No, this isn't the De Young. This is the one that's in Rio. Sorry about that.
As you fly in or you see pictures of Rio, you see Rio surrounded by the forests and the hills, and you see this city surrounded by nature. The external view of it is this powerful relationship to its environment. And then when you come to Rio and walk the streets, you realize it's not just around the city.
I'm going to try to turn off the subtitles. Not sure how to do that. Does that do it? It's not doing it. Okay.
It's in the street. And I feel that more than any city that I've been to, the presence of nature. So it was that kind of challenge for me as an artist who works with nature, is to find nature in the building and to make that connection between the building and its origin. And that's a very creative sort of dynamic for me to work with. I wanted a brick building. And this one is fantastic because the brick is not new, but it's kind of almost, it's crumbling. The brick walls of this particular area, the warehouses, the decaying walls that were revealing their interior. The idea of working with those walls. Every building is somehow in the decay, has also revealed some of its geology, where windows were blocked, where once there was a door. And first I started to look at the windows and old doors and the idea of making works that were in those areas and making a raw clay work that would crack, so it would be this connection between the building and its origin as clay. The clay is from a place where bricks are made. This is just about to become a brick, this clay, and we take it. So you walk through the buildings into the brick, into the origin of the brick. I didn't know how to make the dome. I know what I wanted to be inside the dome, but I didn't know how to make.
So I like the idea that he's bringing nature inside of. I mean, not only does he work in nature, but he is bringing nature into the city or into where humans are. And a lot of his works you can't really see, as I mentioned, because they don't last very long, or they're far away out in the middle of nowhere. And so he has, some of these pieces or some of these installations that he does that the public can be involved with and last longer than just an hour or so.
I wasn't sure how to make the dome, and Marcelo came to see me in Scotland, and he showed me a video of the Indian dwellings, and I had in my studio the exact same in a model that I was doing for another commission. I've made works like this before, not with clay, but it was a really nice moment where I realized this sculpture I've already done can combine with this one I want to make for the bones inside. The clay eventually was something that I particularly was interested in because of the brick building, but also the clay that Rio is on and in the hills, and this relationship with the clay. So it's a material that is very important to the city. But I wanted to go a little deeper, I wanted to get underneath the surface of things, and felt that to push it would be to actually enter the brick or enter the building somehow into a space that was raw and a very intense space. So you were actually engulfed in both the building but also the clay.
It's beautiful.
Inside the building is this clay. And I think that's what you try to do in the work, is to try to remember the origin, to go beneath the skin of the surface appearance of the place, of the building. I think this work will possibly do that particularly well, going inside the brick. But this is a whole technique. I understand the clay really well. I've worked with clay a lot. I mix the clay with human hair because that's a great way to hold the clay together. It's not so visible, but it's in there, and you can see it if you look very carefully. And I also like that people are bound up in the work, they're in the walls. And those are also the techniques that I've developed, but I've never worked against the wood before, or I've never made a dome. I've made flat ceilings, but the hairness clay and the wood was unusual. This particular piece is underwritten by a kind of a learning process. This has a deep sense of lack of control running through this one because the materials were so robust. So the beautiful thing, I hope, which will now occur, is that the whole structure, underlying structure, will start to speak and create cracking and things that will talk about how it was built. It'll be all cracked. It'll be like this, I don't know, like looking in the universe or something. Mm-hmm. It'll be in a state of collapse, a suspended collapse. It'll be like somebody falling, but never reaching the ground. Cracks essentially are about the abdication of control, because you can't predict the crack. That's why I make them. They're like throws, you throw something into the air and there's an unpredictability about that, but you know that if you throw something in a certain way, in a certain light, in a certain atmosphere, in a certain place, at a certain time, it will be a great throw. So whilst you can't control it, there are some things you can work with. You make the right circumstances, and this is what I've done here, I hope. It has to be in the nature of art to push things. You have to,
I hope I am an artist that doesn't rest on something that I know, and I will always do something that has an element of the unknown about it. And I think the older you get, I'm 56 now, and we've got 20 odd years left making sculpture, hopefully a bit more, whatever. You know, I'm not going to spend that making things I know. I want to be doing these. This is far more interesting, even though it is a little tense. Discomfort is a good state for an artist to be in. You can explain it like I have, and the rationale and the conceptual elements of the piece, but I think it's really important that ultimately it's something that can only be explained to a point after which it has to explain itself, and that enters the territory of the inexplicable, and it has to be experienced. And a work like this, it really will have to be experienced, you know. But ultimately, when the work's finished, and you come off that street, and all that street life, and all that energy, and the light, and the people, and then you walk into this very intense, quiet space inside the brick. I think that will then move into an area of the inexplicable.
Okay, so actually I was going to show you the De Young, which is kind of interesting because it's also about cracks. So hopefully I have that video on my list, but so that was really interesting. I had just found out about that work when I did research for this talk, and I thought it was beautiful, and I liked a lot of the things that he said about how tension is a good thing for an artist, and how he didn't want to keep making the same thing, that he wanted to experience new things and new ways of doing things, and keep keeping it in the territory of you don't know what's going to happen. And then again, he's working with that interior space, that circular space to come into, like the circular black space that's in actually the piece behind me. Let me see, like that, this one with the leaves, and then that particular brick dome made out of bricks and the cracks that they cause. Okay, so let me see if I can find now the De Young one. I don't know why it was not in the right place. Let's see, is this the one? Yep. And this one's completely different because he does try to control the cracks on this one. So here we go. And perhaps you've seen this, and you may not have known that it was his work. It's at the entrance when you walk into the De Young Museum over in Golden Gate Park.
As the new De Young Museum in Golden Gate Park neared completion, several world-renowned artists were commissioned to create and install new works for the site. Among them, British sculptor Andy Goldsworthy. His piece, entitled Fault Line, fills the courtyard just inside the main entrance. Goldsworthy is best known for ephemeral works, many built to last just long enough to photograph.
Well, the stones that I'm using are from Europe and Appleton green sticks. The idea of a bit of Yorkshire coming to San Francisco was a little bit like a small part of me going to San Francisco.
This is how they build Rome, one piece at a time, right?
Yeah. I've got a great crew here. I've got a fabulous guy called Bernie that's is the stone setter, and his crew are just marvellous to work with. You know, and I've never set pavers before, so you know it's not my job. You know, I'm the guy who hits them. And you can imagine, you know, for them, their whole remit is you don't break stone. You know, they don't break stone, and here this guy comes in and starts loving the thing that they hate. You know, the crack. And that's what art's about, isn't it? It just like looks at things totally from the other perspective. You know, it makes you see things in a different way that you would normally.
Goldsworthy's piece will draw visitors into the museum along a series of fissures that curve and zigzag across the courtyard, cleaving rough-hewn boulders of the same stone as the pavers that surround them.
I was talking possibly the need for some benches of some kind, so that was how I thought, well, let's put some stones there from the quarry, and then I realised that take it a step further and actually integrate those into the line on the floor, so wherever a big stone meets the line, the crack runs through it, so it is all an integral, joined work. Obviously, cracks have reoccurred in my art for a long, long time. There are forms of particular fascination for me. They are forms that lead me into the stone. They're like windows, entrances into the stone. It releases something of the energy of the stone when you break it. And all of these things take on greater significance, obviously, in California. You know, the fact that this museum is being built because the earthquakes rendered the old building unsafe. So to just kind of bring this gentle reminder of that slight threat, you know, to the place is, I think, appropriate. It took me quite a while to learn how to break the stones in a way that would produce a crack that had a kind of energy to it. And eventually I found the best way to do it was to hit the stone from behind with a hammer. The energy of the blow imparted energy to the crack. There are a lot of unknowns, and it is an unpredictable piece. Unpredictability is part of its nature. You know, every time I hit a stone, it's like my heart's a little bit in my mouth, and you know, sometimes I have a run of bad hits and I create this pile of debris which really upsets me. A reject, do you think?
Yes, I guess it is. See this little thing right here?
I know.
In here?
Yeah, that's a reject. So put it on
a...
It might appear to be the simplest of things, you know, just a crack in the pavement, but the level of effort, the huge amount of effort is put into making that line appear effortless in the way that it runs through this place is enormous. There's a lot to be resolved in it, but I can feel, you know, this last two days, this glimpse of the work beginning to come alive.
Okay, so have people seen that, his work over at the De Young? Yeah. Lena, are you following his work, or do you just happen to come upon them? And you're on mute.
No, I do follow him. I also works at what is Presidio. At the Presidio.
Yes.
Right. He has a few works there too.
Mm-hmm.
Just extremely interesting. I've seen the film on him, and after seeing that film, you want to see every work that he has done.
Oh,
Very,
right.
very
The River and Tides one is one that he made, and there's one about his a more recent one that was made about his life. Yeah,
Right.
cool.
Very fascinating.
Yeah, AJ, you've seen his work also, it sounds like.
Yeah, interesting, because also that's one of my, as an engineer, I was a pavement engineer. I specialized in crack, but not making, filling them up. So now it's interesting, can be a piece of art. And first time I was wondering how they create that crack. So now I found out. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I could imagine that the Masons probably that he was working with were probably thinking he was a little nuts or something to be trying to purposely make cracks, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. All right, let me see what I've got next for you. So I showed that one. Okay. Okay, maybe I'll show you some examples of his work, and if I have time, there's one more video I want to show you about the red rock that he's often using in his work. But let's look at this one. This is just some examples of his work.
Unforgettable vacation memory. It didn't actually begin here. This memory began.
Okay, there's some more of his work. You start seeing some common themes in his work. The leaf crack. The resolution is not great on some of these, but you get the idea. Stone River lit up. Okay. Okay, so you got to see a mixture of his temporary, more ephemeral pieces and his some of his more permanent pieces. And the last video I'm going to show you. Oops. Is when we're he's kind of doing this capturing the ephemeral in a different way.
This is the place where I found the red stone. I mean, I found this red all over the world, in every country that I've worked in, and the reason our blood is red is because of its iron content. So we share a connection with the stone. But when I find it in Australia or Japan or France, you know, that I feel like I'm touching a bit of the red here too. I'm tapping into the same vein. Well, the source of scar snowball was made several years ago and was one of a series of paintings or drawings, watercolors, I guess, that were made from snowballs collected at the source of the scar. And they were mixed with stone pigments and earth pigments collected along the scar between where it rises and where it joins a nith. This is more or less how the one in the Tate was made, and it's been out here for about an hour now, and it's just beginning to melt, and I can see a small pool beginning to form at the base, and at some point it will start to draw itself down the paper, which is on a slight slope. Instead of sitting and doing a watercolour, say, of the Lowther Hills or the hills around here, these paintings are actually made in a process that is the same way. You know, they're not represented; they are it. The snow is the place. The pigment is the place. The way they melt is how snow melts. The way the paper reacts with that melt is how the landscape reacts to the effects of water. I can control the rate of melt to some extent because of the heat of the room, but I would never kind of start tilting the paper and working it. For the drawing to have its integrity and strength as an artist, I have to kind of stand back. And that's a really interesting situation for an artist to be in, where actually not making something produces a far stronger result. I think that there is a kind of a core aspect to what I do, which is the ephemeral work that I make every day. I go out and make something. And then there's all these other areas that I explore as well, you know, the installations in galleries, the video pieces that I've made, and of course all the large permanent sculptures that I've made all over. And you know, I like that studio element to my work. There's not much of it. I very rarely work in here, and I do have a kind of a romantic idea of the studio. I think that be a kind of proper artist and go to your studio every day, and you know, all this kind of having to go out there and deal with the elements, and yet somehow that side of things is perceived as being the romantic. You know, that's the tough side of the art. This is the less tough. It's easier. Any space, no matter how beautiful, is a dead space compared to outside. You know, I can only sustain installing or working inside for so long before I start drying up a bit. You know, an art has this amazing ability to show you what's there. You know, you're not this kind of observer, and I'm a participant, and things are being continuously revealed through what I make, and that's ultimately the reason I do it.
Okay. So I really thought it was interesting when he was saying that, you know, to do this, to be an artist can sometimes be about not doing anything and letting things reveal itself or just happen, and to step back and not do anything. I think can be more difficult in some ways. And also the idea that what, you know, he was comparing being a studio artist versus being an artist that goes out into the elements, and that the studio artist may think he has the romantic artistic process of being out in nature, where he was saying that being out in nature can be difficult with the elements and all, and that maybe it'd be nice to be in the studio. But I think ultimately he'd rather be out in the elements than being in the studio. So yeah, different kinds of artists. So how do people feel about this ephemeral art, that the only way you can see, I don't know, probably most of his work is through photographs or through books or through documentation? And it's actually also in some ways the way that the Christo and Jean-Claude also work, that their work was only seen, what was it, 2 weeks, and then everything was from documentation or drawings. Of course, I mean, they're completely different. I mean, Christo's work their work was very public, very well, not all of it, so like the umbrellas you couldn't really get to, but like the Golden Gate, or the New York Central Park, that was very public, and the walkways, the planks out in that went across the water, I mean, that was obviously very public. So but again, it was something that wasn't up forever. So two different kinds of styles, but also documentation is a big part of what they do. What remains, I guess. So, all right, I'm coming to the end here, and I was looking like next week, I think I'm going a little bit more traditional. Let me just see really quick. I think next week I am talking about Art Nouveau and Alphonse Mucha, who I think actually didn't like to think of himself as Art Nouveau artist, but definitely had some effect on that time period. So, okay, guess about the end. Yeah, any last comments? Oh, I know, I'll show you one last thing. I totally forgot about this. I was just going to show you this map. Where is it? Oh, here. Okay, so here's a map of some things out in the Presidio. The tree fall is over by Anza. Then Andy Goldsworthy's Earth Wall is over near the Presidio Officers Club, Presidio. Then there's a spiral out more towards Pacific Heights near Pacific Avenue, and the wood line is there at the other end of Pacific Avenue. So if you happen to get out to the Presidio, you could see 4 of his pieces out there. So, okay, everybody, I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Yeah, see you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.